Hi there everyone, Lars here from Camille's Harem. Not just a podcast for novice writers by novice writers, but also a YouTube channel by novice writers for novice writers. Because writing is an adventure, it's more fun with friends. And I've been following the status of the Lord of the Rings Amazon prequel series ever since Jeff Bezos first said that he wanted a series that would rival HBO's Game of Thrones. And I was at first genuinely excited because I was really hoping that with such aspirations to rival the biggest series on television at the time, that the writers would dive into the epics of Middle-earth's first age. Stories like Beren and Luthien, the Battle of Unnumbered Tears, the Fall of Gondolin, Turin Turambar, even though the guy's a bit of a nutjob scumbag, but any case, I have fallen out of love with the idea of the Amazon prequel series ever since news rolled out piecemeal of the troubles behind the scenes and the ridiculous ideas that the writers have been cooking up. Now, I'm not what you would call a purist. I'm someone who likes the idea of films adapting and changing things as is necessary to create what is arguably a good or even better story. Like, for instance, I'm totally fine with the elves showing up at the Battle of Helm's Deep. It was fun, it was good, and I loved the scale of the siege of Minas Tirith, even though the battle at the Black Gates is canonically larger in scale. And I get why Tom Bombadil and the Scouring of the Shire were cut, and why lines were mixed up between different characters and a ton of other things. But really, it was good because Peter Jackson did a phenomenal job sticking true to the themes and the overall story of the Lord of the Rings. Sticking true to the canon. That was what made it good. On top of that, he just assembled a fantastic team. And you can tell their love for the story. And I'm beginning to ramble and gush about it because the Lord of the Rings trilogy is one of my favorite sets of films of all time. So yeah, as you can tell, I'm a huge fan of Tolkien's works. After watching The Fellowship of the Ring back when I was in middle school, I spent the next year reading the entire trilogy, The Silmarillion, and even The Lost Tales to get ready for The Two Towers, because I thought you had to know everything in order to be ready for the next movie. Didn't have to be, but I just fell in love with it. And so from that point on, I just got lost in Middle-earth. I learned how to write in Elven Tengwar. I took world-building cues from Tolkien. I got lost in writing and creating my own maps and everything. And it's just, I love it. I loved it so much that for years, my entire time in high school, everyone just always referred to me as the Lord of the Rings nerd. So, yeah, long story short, as a fan of Middle-earth, I'm in a position where I want more of it. I love it. I crave it. But the Hobbit trilogy has shown me that it cannot be half-assed in any way. It needs to be well done, and the closer you get to Tolkien's work, the better. If it's not done that way, it will be, frankly, a disaster, a paltry imitation of the masterpiece, and it will tarnish people's enjoyment of the story and even potentially of the fantasy genre, because Lord of the Rings established modern fantasy. So, with all of that in mind, how can an anime film live up to Tolkien's legendarium? Can it live up to Peter Jackson's epic trilogy? Can it live up to the expectations of tens of millions of Tolkien fans all over the world who have been starved for good Middle-earth stories for nearly 2 decades? I honestly think it will. And to explain my position, let's get into the story of Helm Hammerhand, which will be the core story of the upcoming anime movie. So I'm going to get into that, and caution, there are spoilers ahead for Tolkien's story and for what we will possibly see in the movie. So, with that spoiler warning out of the way, let's dive into the story of Helm Hammerhand and the War of the Rohirrim. Helm Hammerhand was the king in Edoras during a far more brutal age for the Rohirrim. They were not the noble horse lords that you remember from the Lord of the Rings. These people were more akin to a type of nomadic Viking community that, rather than fighting along their long ships, fought astride horses. They were boisterous, adventurous, and always looking for a good fight. And Helm Hammerhand, the king of Rohan, embodied these traits perfectly. And for a little bit of background to truly understand what's going on here, The Kingdom of Gondor had relatively recently given the lands of Rohan and Dunland and all that's bordering Isengard, the fortress of Orthanc, the forest of Fangorn, to the Rohirrim as a gift for their leader Eorl, riding in to save Gondor at a time of great peril. The Corsairs of Umbar, the Wain Riders of the East, the Black Númenóreans, and the people of Rhûn and Harad had long fought Gondor and had several times nearly won and obliterated the southern half of Elendil's ancient kingdom. But in each time where it seemed like Gondor would fall, the Rohirrim appeared to save the day. So now, a few generations away from Eorl, the people of Rohan are now firmly entrenched in the land of Rohan, and they have mixed with the native people of Dunland. And one of these people of mixed descent was the man Freka, who came to Eodoras to ask for Helm's daughter's hand in marriage to his son Wolf. The two, however, traded insults, and Helm killed Freka with a single punch. Wolf rallied the Dunlandings and attacked Rohan along a wide front, and his attack coincided with a great invasion, likely out of Harad, which prevented Gondor from coming to Rohan's aid. Eodoras was overrun, and Helm's own son was killed while defending the palace. Helm was driven with the remainder of his family to the Hornburg. The castle was then besieged by the Dunlandings, and the long winter set in. But the king was undaunted. Driven by desperation and hunger, the king went out alone to meet his enemy and killed them in the snow with his bare hands. His people would sound the castle's war horn each time he went out, and soon the entire army of Dunland trembled before the king. He was described as a wraith and a snow troll, barreling through the snow as he personally slaughtered his foes. Then, one day, as the horn sounded, the people of Dunland saw Helm Hammerhand standing tall, unconquered, dead in the snow, but somehow even in death more terrible than he had ever been in life. The armies fled, and when the winter broke, Helm's nephew Freylaf rode out of Dunharrow and devastated Dunland, broke the siege, and freed the people of Rohan. But in the process, Rohan was greatly weakened, and as a result, Saruman was given leave to possess Orthanc and Isengard in hopes that he would defend Rohan. But this set the wizard's own evil plans and aspirations into motion, and it also began the line from which Theoden, king of Rohan, hails. And when you know all of this history and the traditions behind the Rohirrim, it gives even more weight to this amazing scene from the Two Towers.
Simbalmuna. Ever has it grown on the tombs of my forebears.
Now it shall cover the grave of my son. Alas, that these evil days should be mine. No parent should have to bury their child.
So, that is the story of Helm Hammerhand and the War of the Rohirrim, and this is a story that is right up Japan's alley. A story of families and clans battling each other, grim conflicts to the death, questions of honor, a hero who fights until he literally dies but still remains standing, unbeaten, unconquered. And if the writers in the studio play to their strengths and follow the story as Tolkien wrote it, they will have an epic on their hands. Tapping into the grimmer storytelling and even potentially the style of 90s and early 2000s anime would really fit the story of Helm Hammerhand as well, and really bring a good grim life to the War of the Rohirrim. Now, personally, this is me sounding off my own personal opinion right here, I actually would have gone with either adapting the war against the Wain Riders or the Ride of Eorl, but that's just me. Seriously though, if the writers stick to the framework as I relate it from Tolkien's own words, this movie will be fantastic! And will also have a great tie-in to The Lord of the Rings. The same cannot be said, however, for Amazon's series. And that's because the writers are doing everything in their power to avoid Tolkien's framework. J.D. Payne and Patrick McKay have almost no credited works to their names. they just have a bad Star Trek film, an upcoming episode for Flash Gordon that no one has seen, and the Lord of the Rings prequel series that no one has seen either. Now, newbies on the scene aren't inherently bad. They can bring refreshing perspectives and ideas, and they also can channel a whole lot of energy into a project. And this is a channel for novice writers, after all. In fact, I think that novice writers really need to be given a chance to rub shoulders more with seasoned storytellers to learn as much as they can and to hone their craft. And as I said, they bring a lot of the energy and fresh ideas that can really make a story awesome. The problem, however, lies in the fact that these two writers have specifically singled out the Second Age, a time period that Tolkien wrote comparatively little about. Now, I'm all for sandbox storytelling, because the more possibilities, in my opinion, the better. But I am fairly certain that I know why they chose the sandbox route by going into the Second Age. It's because they want to deconstruct the legacies and the world of Tolkien in order to write whatever they want to write and then hide their own weak writing skills by saying, well, we're just blazing new territories. We're doing something new. Just accept it. Come on, we're newbies here. It's so totally fine. We know what we're doing. Wait, what? That's so contradictory. Shut up there, Lars. Payne and McKay's only published works, coming back to this, their only published work has been a sloppy, almost fanfic version of Star Trek. Now, many new writers rely on what has been done before, what they have taken inspiration from other established works. Fanfics are a great place to start for many writers, but in this case, fanfiction does not live up to Tolkien's standard. And I get it, you might be saying, Lars, hold up there. Why are you accusing these two guys of writing bad fanfiction before we've even seen the finished product? And come on, their bios say that they've been writing since 1997. Well, there's a simple answer to that. It doesn't matter how long you've been writing if you can't take advice on how to grow and if you rely on shortcuts. These two guys have already proven that they don't know the core characters like Galadriel, and they want to make her a young teenage woman when she is already thousands of years old and fought in the War of the Jewels. Really, they should be focusing on the young man Elrond, because this is his time to rise and shine, but no, they're going to completely ignore him. And the idea of nudity within the series has had a lot of people hung up, which I'll be honest doesn't bother me as much as I know what will happen with it, because novice writers like these guys right here have a strange propensity to cover up weak storytelling with smut, a trend that was made fashionable by the Game of Thrones and bad fanfiction turned popular like 50 Shades of Grey. They also want to include the Shire, for crying out loud, which was undiscovered by the elves and humans until the Third Age. Otherwise, as is consistently stated within the books, if the hobbits had been discovered in the Second Age, they would have been obliterated by the big folk. Come on! These writers don't know the history of Middle-earth. They are not relying on the books, they're relying on what people call member berries. These little things that harken back to better stories, greater stories that have already been told, like Peter Jackson's Lord of the Rings. They do this to make it feel to the audience like they are the worthy successors, rather than earning our adoration through their own great storytelling. Production honestly sounds troubled from what we've heard. There is no good gossip to be had at all about the series, and no press releases have been teasing out the topics that are coming or anything like that, except for the shortcuts of smut and diversity. And come on, these are honestly single signals to us that these guys don't know what they're doing and that they're trying to hit certain checkboxes to cover up their weak storytelling. And some people have even speculated that already $1 billion have been pumped into a pilot that hasn't even been completed yet. And now, while I can't confirm that last part, it is very clear from everything else that I'm seeing that these guys are not living up to the Lord of the Rings or Tolkien's Legendarium. And so that is why I think I know what is going on here with the Amazon Lord of the Rings prequel series. These lazy creators are going to circumvent Tolkien's Legendarium, the only author with that distinction, by the way, by playing around in a sandbox and creating stories that will allow them to mess around with lesser known stories and characters so that they don't break ironclad agreements with the Tolkien estate. Instead, these lazy fanfic writers are exploiting a loophole so they can get paid buco bucks to crank out drivel that will be dictated by corporate fools who think that there is a formula to creating a masterpiece. But there isn't one. Writing good romance is hard, so instead these guys are going to give us smut. Canon is restrictive, so these morons will deconstruct it and insert weaker ideas into the past to claim the victories of the future within the narrative. Exploring established characters with complex personalities is honestly a difficult thing to do, so instead they'll come up with shallow OCs and call them great. Geography within the world of Middle-earth is complex, so instead these guys are going to wave their hands and people will teleport with jump cuts. And the list goes on. All of these are gimmicks that hide the lack of true talent. Tolkien's work is a masterpiece, and the Amazon series has shown me nothing to suggest that they've even reached a sliver of that. True, to be fair, the announcement for the War of the Rohirrim is really fresh. And we only know about as much about this anime movie as we already do about the Amazon prequel series. However, the difference lies in the stories that they wish to tell. Amazon wants to mess around in a sandbox and gamble hundreds of millions of dollars on a fanfiction, whereas Sola Entertainment is clearly using an established story and established characters that you can read and understand. So, that's what we've got going on here. And for me, the hype is real, the showdown is set, and I'm excited to see what's going to happen next. Now, I'm going to keep my eyes on this unfolding series of events and on these two projects, the show and the movie. And I am ready to either eat my words about this or dish them out with relish. So, in the meantime, I highly encourage all you writers out there to check out our writing advice over at our podcast, Camille's Harem, where we do actually dive pretty deep into what you can do with your characters, with plots, intimacy, setting things up. We dive deep into that and we share our experiences as novice writers and how we have learned and grown through our various processes. We also have writing challenges for you to check out over at our Pinterest page, and we have a growing community over at our Discord. Links for all of those are going to be in the description. And if you'd like my thoughts on what I think Amazon should do with Middle-earth, you can already check out the video that I've done on that through the link right here. And thank you for joining us on this adventure that we call writing. And until then, y'all.
Hey-ho to the bottom I go, to heal my heart and drown my woe. Rain may fall and wind may blow, but there still be many miles to go. Sweet is the sound of the pouring rain, and the stream that flows from hill to plain, better than rain or rippling brook. There's a Mongo beer inside this tub.